We have arrived at a section of Edgecombe County that is, well, a bit obscure. Situated just a couple of miles below the Halifax County line is the community of Bricks. Now, yes, there is an array of houses within Bricks lined along Highway 301. However, what makes this community really interesting is something else. You see, I am standing here at this intersection of Highway 301 and Bricks Lane. We need to travel down Bricks Lane. Now, what was the purpose of the name of Bricks? Was it named for a factory that made bricks? Was it the home place of some kind of grand brick building? Well, actually, none of the above. The community was named in honor of Joseph K. Brick, who gave 1,600 acres for a school campus that stretched from Halifax to the Atlantic Coastline Railroad near the northernmost point of Edgecombe County. You see, the Bricks School was one of two rural academic complexes in Edgecombe County built to serve black students. It is composed of a mixture of building types that are informally laid out in a quiet rural setting some distance away from that busy highway you just saw. Thomas Sewell Inbourden founded a private school for African Americans here in 1895. The first Bricks building, built here in 1895, so happened to be composed of brick. It was a large, 3-story classroom and dormitory with segmental arch windows, 9 bays wide and 3 bays deep. Now, the top 2 floors have since been removed, and an asphalt shingle hip roof was added. And one thing also, these do not look like segmental arched windows. I do not see any windows here that would lead me to believe there was anything of those present here, so maybe they have been removed. That's kind of a big change, to change the layout and the form of the windows. Maybe not the layout, but the form. Now, let's take a walk on the side of and behind the building to see what kind of windows we might find over there. So, here I am in the back, or the side, over here, but going toward the back of the building. The windows, they look the same. They're square 6/6 sash windows for the most part. None of these windows appear to have anything resembling arches of any sort, segmental, round, whatever. No arches seem to be present on these windows at all, and as I said, that's a pretty big change for those to be removed. Here, we are going around to the other side. Now, yes, the sun, it is shining brightly today. Not much I can do about that. But, if they did take off the top 2 floors, there is a good chance the window layout would have also been altered. I mean, that's a huge move in of itself. I mean, to remove those floors. But anyhow, a colonial revival dormitory and a classical revival dining hall were built here just after 1900. And to each of those, wings were later added in similar styles. Okay, So, we do have this building. This is clearly an older building. Now, it can be a bit hard to differentiate classical revival from colonial revival at times. I mean, in some cases, it is the time the buildings were built, the era, so to speak. They can have similar features. I mean, what would you call this? Colonial revival? Or classical revival? Or even neoclassical? Yes, it does have the pediment and the columns, but you can see those on both. In fact, this building here does slightly resemble the Edgecombe County home in style, which is considered a colonial revival building, a building that is in Tarboro. Now, let us move over here to this building. This here is one of, if not the newest building on campus. They say that this is the newest building on campus, but maybe, just maybe, they're talking about another building? This might have been built after, it's hard to say, or it could have been remodeled in such a way as to become a new building but with part of an old building attached. I mean, some of the information I am using for this episode does come from a 1985 report, long before the people who own it today owned it. Things could have easily changed since 1985. There is, however, that. Could they have been referring to that one over there? Clearly, that's an old building, but there's no wings attached to it. So, I am assuming that is not what they're talking about. The only one with wings attached is this one. The one over there that I'm assuming, and probably fairly correctly to be assuming, the main building, and then the one over there. Only these three appear to have wings attached. Here is the first graduating class of 1902, and here is the administration building. Wow, has that building changed? Yeah, it's the brick building, and just look at what it once looked like. So, from the school's opening in 1895 until its closing in 1933, the Bricks School, it provided the vision for liberty and the larger life to thousands of African Americans in eastern North Carolina. The school stood on the former Estes plantation, located just 3 miles south of the small town of Enfield. Now, keep in mind, Enfield is in Halifax County. The Bricks School stood in Edgecombe County, and the school, it is just 3 miles south of that town of Enfield. So, you know how close I am to the county line. But still, you will only get a photo here of Enfield. Why, might you ask? 'Cause that's not what we're discussing today. At one time, though, that plantation, the Estes plantation, once located here, had been used to break in slaves. It is said that old-timers could point to the spot where the whipping post had stood. Before the Civil War, the tract had been known as the Wiggins Land. Cultivating the plantation's fertile soil with slave labor, owner Mason Wiggins had become known as an outstanding farmer in the state. In the closing days of the Civil War, General Llewellyn Estes and his Army of the Potomac passed near the farm, and Estes so liked the area that he had returned in 1867 and bought the 1,000-acre plantation. For years he struggled in vain to make the farm pay. However, things were about to change in the not-too-distant future. In the communities surrounding the Estes plantation, freed blacks sought to assert the rights of their newly won citizenship. They began to acquire land, build communities, and establish schools. Their efforts, particularly in politics, gave this very region a unique representation. Between 1865 and 1893, the blacks constituted a strong political force exerting influence in local, state, and national government. Now, the Estes Plantation was located in what is called the 2nd District, and here blacks elected hundreds of men to public office, including 4 men to Congress. Because of the large number of blacks elected to political office, the district became known as the Black Second. And toward the end of the 19th century, whites in the region sought to regain political dominance by, yes, disenfranchising black voters. After the passing of a disenfranchising amendment to the state's constitution, George White, the district's former black congressman, left the state saying this: "I can no longer live in North Carolina and be a man." The demise of black political influence signaled the beginning of a new era, during which education would become the battleground. While blacks sought to use the schools to overcome the impact of oppression upon their hearts and minds to achieve liberty in larger life, controlling interests sought the kind of education that would blunt black assertiveness, perpetuating the language and practice of domination. While blacks had been playing an assertive role in politics, Estes had lost his plantation to a Mrs. Julia Elmer Brick, a wealthy New York widow from Brooklyn. Mrs. Brick had traveled in the South and knew the bitter racism which pervaded the area. She decided that the former Estes plantation should be used to establish a school for black youth. Mrs. Brick gave her plantation to the American Missionary Association, or the AMA, an international evangelical and former abolitionist organization. She also provided money for the construction of buildings. So, now you know, at least in part, just how these buildings got here. This area is not on the National Register, at least not yet, the National Register of Historic Places, that is. Still, these buildings do appear as if they are well kept. The AMA had, at the time, set up battlefield schools for black soldiers during the Civil War, and after the war, the AMA went on to establish schools all over the South. Many of these schools today number among what are often referred to as historically black colleges, including the Hampton Institute, Talladega College, and Fisk University. So, Brick's school, it opened on October 1st of 1895 with just 1 student. By year's end, however, it had 54 students, including 13 boarders. During its most prosperous years, the school had an annual enrollment of nearly 400 students. What the Bricks School would eventually become, however, was quite impressive. For, you see, at a time when Southern communities utterly neglected the secondary education of black children, the Bricks School, it became an outstanding center of learning, offering students a liberal arts education as well as instruction in agriculture, in domestic science, and in the manual arts. As a black educational center, the school played a key role in the history of United States education. The AMA appointed Thomas Sewell Inbourden as the first principal of Bricks School. Inbourden himself had attended Oberlin Academy and had graduated from Fisk University in 1891, and after graduation he served as a pastor of a church in Beaufort, North Carolina, and then headed a school in Helena, Arkansas. He served as principal of this here Bricks School until 1926, when he became principal emeritus. Under Inbourden's leadership, the school grew from a common or a primary school to a junior college. Inbourden also led Bricks School toward a strategically prudent response to the educational debate waging at that time. The debate, in fact, had set up some issues that involved a couple of prominent and influential black educational leaders of that time. On one side of the debate, Booker T. Washington, an educator, social reformer, and founder of the Tuskegee Institute, proposed that blacks should work for advances in education and employment rather than social and political equality with whites. He advocated an education of basic agricultural and skilled labor techniques. However, black sociologist W. E. B. Du Bois demanded immediate equality and full rights for blacks. He saw Washington's call for education as a compromise in the quest for educational, political, and economic advancement for blacks. Regardless of how this debate waged, the Bricks School sort of came to occupy both sides. The Bricks School affirmed that the black community needed both liberal and industrial education. The Bricks curriculum included the typical requirements of a classical education while mandating that all students engage in manual labor. It also offered a work-study program which allowed any student to attend the school. The train provided the most convenient transportation for many Bricks teachers, students, and visitors to the campus. Teachers took the train to Rocky Mount to shop in the city's department stores. The developing campus also contained a row of 3 teachers' houses, small 2-story cottages with Victorian elements. Inbourden, he did live in one of them way back in the day. Okay, so we have this one, which, according to the sign, is likely the one that Inbourden lived in. And we have the teacher's cottage, which is quite a distance away over there. Now, the document says there were 3. So, tell me, folks, where's the third one? I mean, I see 2, but I don't see 3. Yes, there is that house, but that is almost certainly much newer. So, where is that third one? Was it demolished? Maybe that is one of them. There is a sign in front of it, but still, I am kind of interested in what that building is over there. And that does not look new by any stretch of the imagination. A model schoolhouse. I'm not certain what is meant by model schoolhouse. What, they were gonna build houses here? Schoolhouses here like this? Like this served as a kind of model for something? Not sure. The document mentions no mention of this building. But hey, we can get a peek in here. It doesn't look like there is much in here. I wonder if this was used for anything. You know, though, there were those necessary outbuildings. You know, things like a water tower, a pump house, a few barns, a few tobacco barns. The farm outbuildings were important when, in the 1930s, the school became the agriculturally oriented Bricks Rural Life School. Okay, folks, so yes, I could walk over to that little outbuilding over there, but we're not going to do that. In fact, this whole area is on private property. Yes, I do have permission to be here, by the way, which is why I am able to film all of this. However, after an existence under a variety of names, including the Joseph K. Brick Normal and Industrial College, the school, it closed in the 1930s. It was later bought by the United Church of Christ and is only occasionally used for conferences. A modern house, a dining hall, and a swimming pool have been built on the campus. So, yes, that's what this building here is, a dining hall. Then, moving over here, a swimming pool. Maybe that's what this is. It kind of does look like a barn, but it looks like the only place that resembles what might be a swimming pool, or what might have been a swimming pool. I can't really see it. It's got like bushes lined in the way. But let's see if we can get a closer peek. Okay, well, I'm not entirely certain what this really is. It looks as if some kind of tarp has been laid over it, which is often done with swimming pools when they're not being used. But then over there, it looks like concrete. I mean, an L-shaped swimming pool. That's kind of strange, but you never know. It's a possibility that's what that is under there. As I said, I can't tell, or maybe it was used for something else. I mean, they do have kind of a post with a gaff kind of thing at the end of it, which I imagine could be used to get stuff like out of the water. Let's see. Yes. Okay, pool rules. That's what this is, folks. This building here, I imagine, is used probably to house, I don't know, pool equipment, like maybe life jackets, rafts, inflatables, or anything else that might be used in the pool. So, yes, I think this is likely a pool. I guess it does have that L shape. Well, that's kind of interesting, but you see, this here is the web page of who now owns the Bricks School location, though the United Church of Christ does not appear present on the web page. The building is still used to hold conferences. Furthermore, though, if one looks hard enough, research on the Bricks School is not all that difficult to locate. Now, yes, I am pressed for time, and this is not the kind of place that is worthy of an hour-long episode. I mean, I could, as I could with a number of other places, but that kind of time is just not in my itinerary today. I mean, if I was going to do such a lengthy episode on bricks, this here would be what I would use, 'cause here you can feel free to pause this video and read this until your heart is content. It can be found via the Digital NC website. But there is not even enough space within the community of bricks for me to cover all of this. The history presented here, though, yes, it is pretty rich and certainly worth the read. But, folks, the time has once again come. I think you know the drill.